All right, everybody, we are live. Let me just make sure I have everything I need. Wee-san, welcome, welcome. I'm going to pop out the chat here so we can drag it over into Roll20 so I can see you guys in the Twitch chat real time. And if there are any issues with my audio or anything like that, please feel free to let me know. Oh. Thank you, sir. Okay. How can I do it where it doesn't pop out? Wendy, welcome, welcome. Just in time. Just trying to make sure all the tech issues are good. And we're coming through loud and clear. Now there will be, Moores said that he's creating a Discord thread for any other questions for people who might be in Discord. Awesome, awesome. I had to get a new laptop today, so just trying to make sure all the tech stuff is ironed out. Is this going to be on the quiz? Just need to find a way to make this stick. So what I'm going to do is just extend this out. Extend this down. Let's see if I can. Yeah, there we go. Perfecto. Make all this as full screen as it can be. Alright, and we'll just give a couple minutes, minute or two, just to let people get in. There we go. And 1 second, I'm going to crack a can of my drink and don't want it to explode the mics. Okay. Wissam, what are you feeling on time before start? Couple more minutes? Sweet. Awesome. All right. Let me do all the peeling and everything before the movie starts, so to speak. Okay. Okay, everybody, welcome. Glad you guys could be here. Everybody from the LML server, anybody from my Twitch chat who just happens to stumble in, that you cannot see my face, I am here. Webcam stuff is something I need to set up on this later. But happy to have you guys here. Today is basically going to be our first of our D&D beginner sessions. And today we're going to build a character. So everything that entails for you to build a level 1 character and feel successful and feel okay with what these major stats and aspects of your character are. So you're only going to be building one character, your character. I'm going to be building 3 different characters, just so I can show you guys a couple of different ways that you can actually do this. So we're going to build 3 different characters. All are going to be A Song of Ice and Fire based, just because that's a good reference point for us to have. So we're going to be building Braun. He's going to be our roguish type. Sneaky, uses lots of skills. We're going to build Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. He's going to be our big, tanky, up front, swinging the sword, lots of heavy armor. And then we're going to build Melisandre, who's going to be a wizard-type caster. So, using a player term, she is what's called a blaster. So she uses a lot of high-damage spells, lots of ways to attack multiple different enemies for spreads of damage and single target for lots of damage. So if you guys are following along with me at home, the SRD, which is located in our Discord, this is totally free to download, totally free for you to access. So if you weren't able to buy a player's handbook, or you don't quite have the money for one right now, that's totally fine. You can follow along with me and build a character from the SRD specifically. You also will have the character sheet. This is the major character sheet that we're going to be going over. And this has 3 major pages in it. So the first page is going to be all of your stats. This is going to be all of your main features, your hit points, your armor, and we're going to go over what each one of these things does as we kind of go along. So we're going to basically build top down. The second page is mostly for flavor. This is where you can put things like your age, your height, how much do you weigh, what is your eye color, your skin color, your hair color, what allies, organizations might you have. You can also put a player picture in here if you'd like. Your backstory, any kind of additional features and traits. So this is also on the first page, features and traits. But if you go over, again, if we're building characters for long-term play, you might have more features than can fit this box. And so this is kind of an overflow for that. And then whatever treasure you might acquire. We all love magic items, we all love getting gold, we all love treasure, and that's where you can kind of put these things. You'll also have your inventory and your equipment up here. You can feel free to put things like that in there as well. But this is just your overflow. And then your last page is specifically going to be for spell casting. So we'll go over what all of these numbers mean, this 0, 1, what's a cantrip, things like that. You might not even play a class that uses this page. So, like, we're going to build a Gregor Clegane. He's probably not going to use the spellcasting page. But Melisandre, on the other hand, is definitely going to be using the spellcasting page a lot. So this is going to be your reference point for what spells you actually have. So, I'm going to be using the player handbook. Again, everything that is in here is also in the SRD, except for just a couple of customization things. Mainly in terms of up here where it says background. Now, in the SRD, if you're looking in the SRD, it only gives you access to one background. That is because, in the style of Wizards and the style of Dungeons & Dragons, they kind of want you to make your own. So, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the backgrounds. Now, the Player's Handbook gives you a lot more options that you can use. And that's just what we're going to do for brevity. So, again, feel free to create your own background. Work with your DM, especially for things like A Song of Ice and Fire, if we're doing things like that, and you want to be a red priest, or say you want to be a faceless man. Things like that. Those might be specific custom backgrounds that you can use and customize to fit your character. Dogfan, no worries. Thanks for coming in. We're just kind of going over the basics right now. So if you're following along with me, you can use this form fillable PDF. I am going to just be doing it in Roll20 because it's what I'm really comfortable with. Now, Roll20 is just an online digital tabletop, completely free to sign up. I know that everybody does not have access to desktops or laptops. So, again, feel free to just follow along with me. But as you'll see, I'm building from the same exact thing that you guys are. So this will all translate 1-to-1. So again, we're building Braun, we're building Gregor, and we're building Mel. This will kind of give us a nice rounded team when we go into our second piece, which is going to be combat. Just running through combat, what does that look like? What do I do? So, the only thing that I'll be using that is not in this, which I need to look up real fast, sorry guys, is the Goliath race. And that's just for Gregor Clegane because, as we all know, he is a mountain of a man. And we're going to be making Braun more of a lathy human type. So, when we're looking at this, we'll start with Braun. The first thing that we kind of want to do is figure out what class we want to be. Now, here you can see my drop-down box. It gives me access to all of the classes. These are from all of the books. So, if you're looking in the SRD, it might not have something like the Artificer, or the Beast Heart, or the Illrigger, but these are just kind of supplemental extra things. The main ones we're going to be looking at are Bard, Barbarian, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Ranger, Rogue, Sorcerer, Warlock, and Tactician. Those are our major classes. Now, today with Braun, we're going to be building a Rogue. So, that's the first thing that we want, is our class. This is going to help us round out our skills, figure out what stats we need, and kind of shape what our character is going to be at first. So, looking through this, Gregor Clegane, he's going to be our fighter. Heavy armor, lots of tank ability, melee, really dusting it up in the fight with other people. Samuel had a good question. If anybody has any questions on what any of the classes are or what they do, so feel free to drop that in there if you have any questions. Now, in the book, it's going to tell you to do your race first. This is something that I like to look at after I've selected the class, because honestly, the class is going to be much more important than the race. The race can be used for whatever you want. In theory, you can play any race with any class. Your races are just going to give you a couple of stat bonuses and some extra features. But they're not going to determine really what you do in the main game. That's going to be more of your class. So Mel, we're going to pick Wizard, as she is very magically inclined. And when it says subclass here, you don't need to worry about that, really, unless you are one of 3 major classes. And that's Cleric. Hey, Kim Buffet, welcome. That's Cleric, Warlock, and Sorcerer. Hopefully I spelled that right. These are the only classes that pick a subclass at level 1. Other than that, really you're just focusing on getting the major pieces that you need to build your character, and as you level up, as you adventure, you will unlock your subclass and extra features that come with that. So, now that we have our classes for our 3 different characters, now we want to kind of start thinking about what race we want to play. Now, again, choosing a race is pretty simple. Just play whatever you like. If you want to be a dwarvish wizard or an orc wizard, that's totally fine. Even if the stats, as it says here, you'll get ability score increases or stat increases. Even if the stat increases for your race don't necessarily apply to your character to make them the strongest version that is, that's okay. Because there are lots of things in D&D that mitigate that. So really just playing whatever you think sounds cool is awesome. Now, for us here, we are going to do things a little more traditionally. And that's just so we can show you the ease of making a character. So, our major races... Oh, sorry. Let me go back up to the table of contents, because that's where it has them all listed out. So, our major races, and there are other races in the more supplemental books that I'm happy to give access to whenever. There are more races and options, obviously, as more books have come out. But these are the major races for just the base game. These are also in the SRD. All of these races are in the SRD. So again, you can follow along with me here. Should be no issue. You have dwarves, elves, halflings, humans, dragonborn, which are kind of like half dragon, half human. Gnomes, half elves, half orcs, and tieflings, who are like devil people, essentially. Now, for ours, we're going to go pretty basic. Again, the only one that I'm going to use that is not in the player's handbook is for Gregor, because there's a specific race called Goliath, who are like 7-foot-tall giant men. And when we think of Gregor Clegane, that's kind of what we picture. Again, this mountain of a man. So we'll actually start with Gregor because he is kind of the odd man out on this one. So this is from Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. There are a couple different versions, but mainly we're looking at these pieces right here. So the ability score increases. What we do is when we're determining our character's ability scores, we increase one score by 2 and a different score by 1. Or we can increase 3 scores by 1. So, gives you a couple different options. Here, we're just going to increase one score by 2 and a different score by 1. Now, what we're going to do here is just on Gregor's sheet, where it says race, we are going to put Goliath. Simple as that. Now, Goliaths don't have a subrace, and their creature type is humanoid, because that's basically what all bipedal races are. They're all humanoids. Now that we have Goliath, and we know how we're going to increase our stats, now we can look at a couple of these other things. Size, most player characters are going to be medium size. Unless, yes, Kimber, this is 14. Yeah, 2014 5e. So, size, most creatures are going to be medium-sized. Unless you're playing something like a halfling or a gnome, those are going to be considered small size. And there's really not much that goes into the size differences. It's mostly rules-based things in combat. Now, one of the biggest things that we're going to see is speed. It says your walking speed is 30 feet. And as you see right here on the top where it says armor class, initiative, and speed, on speed we're just going to put 30. So what does this mean, speed? What does it mean that my walking speed is 30 feet? Well, as you can see back here on my play map, which is just a white room, each square represents 5 feet. So if I can move 30 feet, I can move 6 squares in a turn. And now I can do that left, right, diagonal. Doesn't matter how I move, just that I can move 30 feet per turn. So when it's my turn in combat, I have 30 feet of movement to position myself wherever I like. And that's just an easy way for us to view things on the board. So it just makes it a little easier for combat, and you can kind of plan ahead as, say, Weeson is going, he's doing his turn, Wendy is next. Wendy can start kind of thinking about what she wants to do, where she wants to move. So you can kind of pre-plan your turn in a little bit of a way. So, the next thing that we really need to look at are these down here. So, these are racial bonuses, racial abilities. Now, if I go to Dwarf, you'll see that dwarves have different abilities, and different abilities based on what kind of dwarf you are. So, you might be a hill dwarf, or you might be a mountain dwarf, and those are going to give you different benefits. As you can see here, dwarves get dark vision, dwarven resilience, and dwarven combat training. Each of those will give you different proficiencies, different bonuses to certain aspects of the game. And that's just a whole stop. For every race in the game, every race is kind of different. So really, as you're making these, you might have an idea of what you want to play. Hey, I want to play a dwarven barbarian. But what kind of dwarf do you want to be? It might have some differences. One may be better for what you're wanting to do. So just make sure you're kind of perusing that and just making the best choice for you. Now, for Goliath, what we can do is, and if you're doing the form fillable character sheet with me, you can just copy and paste these features into your features and traits. So what I will do is I'll just copy and paste these. Yes, exactly. The best choice can also be thematic. Exactly. I've had, yes, it doesn't have to be stat-based. One of the coolest characters that I have ever run for was a orc wizard. And orcs in D&D actually get a negative to the thing that makes you a good spellcaster. But that wasn't what the player wanted to play. So, again, feel free to experiment, explore your options. It doesn't have to be min-maxed. You want to make what is fun for you. So as I'm adding this in, this is a racial feat, Goliath, and I'll just paste it in there. And when I click this little cogwheel, it actually creates a perfect little encapsulation of what that ability is. And I can always drop that down. Roll20 this is a specific thing for Roll20 that makes it a little bit easier just to kind of keep track of these things. So as I'm just copying and pasting these over, sorry, not too born. And then my final one, Stone's Endurance. We will just copy and paste that. And just like that, we have all of our racial abilities. So those are our major racial abilities. That's our speed. That's our size, our creature type. And then we have languages down here. So each character knows a certain number of languages as well. And this will go in your other proficiencies in languages. Now, languages vary from Common, which pretty much everybody knows Common. That's just our, in Star Wars, that's your Galactic Basic, your English. That is just your language of choice that you play in. So if you're a Spanish speaker, it might be Spanish, French speaker, French, so on and so forth. Now, our race will actually tell us what we can speak and read and write. So we have Common, and then we get one other language that you and your DM agree upon. Now, for Gregor, we're going to make this easy. We are just going to do Common. So there's our Common language proficiency. And then we're also going to do Giant, as Goliaths are very big, giant people. So that's all you need for race. We have already set up one aspect of our character. Now, that's Gregor. Now we're going to do Brawn. So Brawn is a little more simple. We are just going to play Brawn as a human. Straight up human. Yes, exactly. Exactly, Sam. D&D assumes that humans are the most populous race, and therefore human, quote-unquote, is known as Common, the Common language. So, with Brawn, we're going to play a human. Nice and simple. And humans in D&D are kind of a jack of all trades. See if I can snipe this. 29. That is not human. No. Oh, sorry. I'm going the wrong way. Half elf, half orc. Oh. I overshot it. Apologies. There we go, human. Okay, so humans have a very broad spectrum of things that they can do. If you want to kind of do anything and kind of be good at everything, human is definitely going to be the way that you want to go. Humans are very easy to set up. And you can make a human in any class and be pretty okay. So now with the humans, they go pretty much by the bog standard. Now, here in D&D, it gives you a lot of different ethnicities and names, things like that you can use. But again, depending on your setting, there might be different ethnicities, different races, different types of humans. This is mostly just for Forgotten Realms, which is your bog standard. Wizards of the Coast has made this setting. This is the original setting from the 1970s D&D. So, really what we're wanting to look at is the traits. Again, just like we looked at traits for Gregor, we're looking at the traits for Braun as well. Now, here at the bottom, it says variant human traits. There are a set of optional rules that you can use in your D&D games that are mainly DM dependent. Variant human is one of those, and it just gives you a different way of building a human. Again, age, think just normal human age range. We have characters in A Song of Ice and Fire that are as young as Rickon, who is like 4, and then we have characters as old as Maester Aemond. So feel free to play with the age. If you want to play a really young character, you can do that. You want to play a really old character, you can do that. But again, it's just about consulting with your DM and just making sure that it's appropriate and it works for what you want to do. Now, when it says alignment, this is something that I don't really hammer as much to players, but let me look up the alignment chart. There it is. So you guys have probably seen memes of this before. This is just the alignment chart. Sorry. I should have just downloaded this beforehand. But this is just the alignment chart. And what alignment means really is just how does your character kind of sit in the world? And there's 3 different categories for each, and they line up with each other. So you have good characters, neutral characters, and evil characters. So your good characters are your Johns, your Neds. Your neutral characters might be your Brons or your Tyrions. And then your evil characters, this might be your Eurons. Now, you also have lawful, neutral, and chaotic. So lawful means that you generally follow the laws of the land. So a lawful good character would be Ned Stark. A lawful evil character might be somebody like, say, Khal Drogo. He follows the laws of his people, not necessarily a great guy. And then you might have your lawful neutral. This might be like your Grand Maester Pycelle, who doesn't really have a side, but definitely has a law and a code that he follows. Your neutrals, these are the people who kind of sit in the middle. They might have some morals, but they're able to kind of flexibly use those to suit their ends. A neutral good character, I think of Beric Dondarrion. Neutral, he is a morally good character, but is willing to step outside of the bounds of the law to get what he needs done. A true neutral character, these are some of the tougher ones to play from a alignment perspective, but not really good, not really evil, doesn't really follow the law or break it. So these are kind of tough. This might be like your Septon Maribald. You know, your true neutral characters who just kind of want to... Yes, thank you, Isan. Yeah. Your true neutral characters, these are kind of tough to find in A Song of Ice and Fire, as we've seen. Trying to think of some good examples. Maybe like a Maester Aemond. This is a tough one to really put like one character in, because it's not really an easy alignment to try and play. But I never tell people to play to your alignment. Just use it as a guide for kind of helping you figure out what you want to do with your character. Then your neutral evils, this might be your Vargo Hoat. Your brave, yes, faceless men. Yes, dog fan, that is a great one. Like a Jaqen H'ghar would be a good, true neutral character. And then like your neutral evil, we used Beric on one side, Vargo Hoat on the other side, also is probably a good example of a neutral evil character. Kind of does the same things as Beric, but overall, not a very good guy. Yes, Varys would definitely be a neutral evil, for sure. That's another great example. And then your chaotics. These are your wild childs. Yes, Hodor, neutral good. Yes. These are all great examples. And then your chaotics, these are the people who, they don't care about the law. They're, these are what I like to affectionately call the wild children. So your chaotic good side is going to be, yeah, I'm a good person. Yes, Lim. Lim is a great example, Sam, of your chaotic good. Happy to do whatever, doesn't care about the law at all, but generally is on the morally right side. Your chaotic neutral, these are the true wild cards. You never really know what these guys are going to do necessarily. It could be good, it could be evil, but you just know that they're not following the law. They're not following a code, really. Whatever kind of benefits them in the moment. Bronn, yes. Tormund, another great example. Yeah, this is our Bronn, Tormund. Yeah, chaotic neutral. And then your chaotic evil, COTF. I think Bronn is a really good example of the chaotic neutral. Because on one hand, he will help Tyrion kill Ser Vargas, but then on the other... Oh, Children of the Forest. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Children of the Forest would be another good one. Yeah. And then chaotic evil, these are just the worst of the worst. Think of it like your Jokers. This is your Eurons. Your Eurons, your Warlocks, these are just the real scumbags of the world. And when you're making a character in this constraint of alignment, don't feel like you need to fit yourself into one box, but just have an idea of, hey, if you want to play a chaotic evil character, you still need to be able to be in a party with somebody who would potentially be lawfully good. A season 1 example that I think of is Littlefinger. Yeah. The season 1 example I think of from the show is Littlefinger working with Ned. Littlefinger definitely on the chaotic neutral, chaotic evil side. But as we know, Ned Stark is lawfully good. And even though... Yes, assassin characters. Mm-hmm. Even though these two people are on different sides of the alignment chart, so to speak, they still work together to advance each other's goals. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing alignment. Alignment is not a hard and fast rule. Yes, that is another good idea. Yes, that's something that could be done in like a party session 0, Sam. Encouraging players to discuss what kind of characters they want to play, what kind of alignments they want to play. Sometimes you'll have a party that they all want to be on this side. They all want to be on the evil side. And again, that's just kind of talking with your DM, discussing what kind of game you guys want to play personally. There's a lot of fun to be had playing evil games. There is a lot of fun to be had playing all good characters. But generally, parties will have No, no. There should never be any kind of divine backlash for stepping out of alignment. Alignment is more of a fluid rule. So, just because you have to make a certain kind of decision in the game that might not necessarily go with your alignment doesn't mean you're going to get punished for it. But just use this as a framework for kind of how your character carries themselves in the world. Yes, it's a lot more flexible than previous editions. So mostly we'll talk about leveling up, but the two major ways that you level up are through experience. That is one way of playing. Kill monsters, get experience. But 5th edition has introduced a new way of leveling up called milestones. So this is more based on your DM. Your DM basically gives you levels for achieving certain milestones. Because the way that 5th edition is just set up, the only way that you can get XP is by killing monsters. So Milestone gives you a little more flexibility for your politician characters, your roguish characters, your bards, to kind of highlight their skills and make it so it's not just all combat all the time. They do, but if you're playing Milestone, you don't really have to worry about monster XP so much. Yeah, you just go like you would, say like World of Warcraft. Everybody's level up is the same amount of XP. You're just basically trying to hit that threshold. But for, say, if you're playing in a Milestone game, which is more common in 5th edition, you might level up when you complete a quest. Or if you save the town from the incoming bandits. Or defuse a very hostile political situation. A good example of milestone that I give, especially for A Song of Ice and Fire, would be The Sworn Sword, the second Dunk and Egg novella. So, in The Sworn Sword, Dunk and Egg are mostly playing as mediators and politicians between the Checky Lion and the Black Widow. There's really only one combat in the entire story, and that's Dunk versus the Long Edge. So if you were playing a traditional XP style game, the person who's playing Duncan would be the only person who gets experience because he's the only person who fought in the battle. Versus if you're playing Milestone and your Egg character is politicking, talking through, convincing, Dunk is seducing the Lady Widow, they're learning lore about the world from the Checky Lion, and in the end they come to this conclusion that is amicable for all parties. Your DM might say, hey guys, great job. You guys did awesome. You really diffused this situation with very little bloodshed. Everybody gets a level up. That's kind of how Milestone works. So mostly you'll probably see DMs in our server running Milestone games because it's just a little bit easier to have players. Yes, exactly. It leaves a lot more room for actual roleplay. And it's not just everybody's going to become murder hobos and we're just going to kill everything that we come across. It's more of looking at the situation and what's the best way to solve the situation in a way that works for everybody. So that's just a general rundown of alignment and XP. We'll go back and we'll talk a little bit more about XP a little bit later, but just so we can keep going, and we'll finish setting up Braun. Again, size, humans pretty much come in all shapes and sizes. Yes, rewarding RP is usually the right choice. Now, there might be some games where you want to do XP. Say it's a mega dungeon game, where you're just going through this super huge dungeon, and you're trying to clear it out, and you're just going in to get treasure and get it out. That might be more suited to an XP game. But with some of the way that, or with the way that people have been talking, it seems like a lot of people want more nuance to their game, more of the role playing, more politicking, using of those skills. So generally, Milestone is going to kind of be the way that you want to go. So Bronze base speed, human, is going to be 30 feet, just like Gregor. Most classes are going to be 30 feet. I think the only class that isn't 30 feet is halflings and gnomes. And they're also the only classes that are small in terms of size. And I believe that their speed is 25, but if somebody can double check, but I'm pretty sure that they are 25 feet movement. So, languages: speak, read, write, common, and one extra language of your choice. Again, this is all dependent on Face Dog fan. This is all dependent, again, on the world that you're playing in. So, if we are playing in Westeros, we're playing in A Song of Ice and Fire, Bronn is going to know Common, and Bronn might know, I'm trying to think of a free city, let's say Tyroshi. And now, again, this could be any of the races that we're talking about. So, like, again, if you're playing in a more traditional high fantasy game, say Lord of the Rings or a traditional D&D game, these languages will be things like Dwarvish, Elven, Dragon, things like that. Those are mostly going to be the things that you see. But here, I'm making these specifically for A Song of Ice and Fire flavor, so I'm just using A Song of Ice and Fire languages. Oh, I thought that they get one other thing, but I might be wrong about that. Okay, so that's it for Bronn. Humans don't really get any other, but let me just double check real quick, just so I'm not cheapening our... And I'll post a link, or I'll create a link page to where you can find some of these things, some of these websites that I'm looking up. Yes, Thieves' Cant is still a thing, which Bronn would know, but that's more whenever we get into like building out our class. Nope, that's it. Okay. So we are done with Bronn. And I don't need Goliath anymore. So now we're just going to do our last one, which is Melisandre. So for Mel, she can kind of fit into a couple different styles or races, but for just the purposes of this, I'm going to go with Elf. So I can show you guys how you would create a character who has a subrace. So for Mel, we are going to make her an elf, as elves are some of the more magical race in D&D. And also because elves really play into something that we know about Mel, is that she's incredibly, incredibly old. So it makes it really helpful when you're trying to make a character like that. Sometimes you want to look at what are the age ranges of this race. So for elves, we're going to get a +2 to our dexterity score. Age, we're not really going to worry about so much. Alignment, we're not really going to worry about so much. Speed is a base 30 speed. So again, just like our other medium-sized characters, Mel is going to be able to move the same. Now, when we look at her abilities, she has something called Dark Vision. And I'm going to put this in the Roll20 character sheet just so it's a little bigger for people trying to read along with me. Dark Vision. So Dark Vision is a really helpful tool in D&D. Not all races get access to Dark Vision. Oh, that looks weird. 1 second. Yes, thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys so much for following along. Yeah, we are so close to affiliate. Oh, that is the spell. I don't need the spell. There it is. Oh, this is... Sorry, guys. 1 second. Actually, I'm going to go into our handy-dandy SRD because we have it right here as well. That is even worse. Sorry, guys. Let's try and make it clean for us to see. Because I'm actually going to make this available. I'm going to make this Roll20 game available for you guys after this. So you can come in and you can look at our sample character sheets as well. Okay. This should post fine. There we go. Okay, so Dark Vision is a pretty important part of the game in some aspects. Not every race gets it. It is, so humans, Goliaths, our two previous characters, Gregor and Braun, they do not have Dark Vision. So that obviously makes it harder for them to see at night. Basically, what Dark Vision does is, in dim light, within 60 feet of you, you can see it as if it were bright light. And in darkness, you see it as if it was dim light. And the way that I describe how Dark Vision looks to players, think of like a cat's vision, where it's kind of gray, but you can see these figures pretty clearly. That's kind of how I describe Dark Vision. Now again, like we talked about before, yes, night vision camera. Exactly, Wendy. Now, as we talked about before, each square or space on the board is 5 feet. So if I have Dark Vision up to 60 feet, you can see how far away that is. That's substantial amounts of light. Especially when you're in really dark caves, dungeons, things like that. Dark Vision can become a very, very helpful tool overall. Now, our next one that we have is Keen Senses. So for this, Mel gets proficiency in the perception skill. Now, I'm sure you're asking me, what is the perception skill? Over here beside our stats, we have all of these different skills that we use to do things in the world. Now, we'll talk about these later when we get into building our stats, because our stats on the very far left influence how good we are at certain skills. And what class we are can give us extra bonuses to certain skills as well. So I'm just going to put this in as Keen Senses. And we'll come back to this when it's applicable. But basically, this just gives us an extra proficiency in a different skill. So it's definitely very, very helpful. We have Fey ancestry because elves specifically are very much tied to the Fey and the fairies. They get advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put them to sleep. So, very helpful as well. And I know you're seeing this term saving throw, and you might not know what that is. Right above our skills, we have a section called saving throws. And each one of these saving throws is tied to a different one of our skills. Now, saving throws help you overcome negative effects against you. And these are based on all kinds of factors. If you are trying, or if somebody is trying to charm you, you may make a charisma saving throw. If you are trying to avoid a crossbow bolt trap that has just gone off in front of you, you might make a dexterity saving throw. Somebody tries to poison your drink, like Maester Crescent, you might make a constitution saving throw. So, all of these different saving throws just mean that you are trying to overcome a negative effect against you. So this is Fey ancestry. This is a racial feature. So specifically here, we have advantages on saving throws against being charmed. So it's very hard to charm us, and we can't magically be put to sleep. And the reason for that actually ties into the last of these for the elves. This is called trance. Let's see if it shows right here. Yes. So elves don't really need to sleep, just like Mel doesn't need to sleep. Instead, what they do is they meditate deeply for 4 hours. You have to do this in one block during the day. Usually you would do this in what would be called a long rest. So at the end of the day, you're done adventuring for the day, you've fought battles, you have hiked, you've traveled. Usually you're going to take what's called a long rest. And this is just a reset on all of your abilities. Now, a short rest is something you can take during the day to help give you a little pep in your step. A short rest generally takes an hour in terms of the game world time, while a long rest takes 8 hours. Usually during a long rest, you'll also set watches as a party to make sure you're not ambushed in the night. So for Mel, specifically, when she takes a long rest, she has to have 4 hours uninterrupted deep meditation for her to gain the benefits of a long rest. Usually that's not a problem when you're with a party. Because, again, everybody will have different watches to make sure that everything is going according to plan. Paste this in. Okay, so we have Mel, we have her racial abilities, and now for her languages. Of course, she knows Common, as do most races in the game. Yes, full HP, full spells, any of your specific class abilities will be refilled. And then when we get to like setting health and setting stats for the characters, I'll discuss a concept called hit die and what you use these for and how you can get them back. So Mel knows Valerian. I think that's how you spell it. I might be wrong. Feel free to correct my spelling. But we'll say Mel knows Common and she knows High Valyrian. She knows the Azor Ahai myth. She is looking for the prince that was promised. Ah, thank you, Noble. When in doubt, add a Y. Valyrian. Yes, High Valyrian. So we'll say that Mel knows Common and High Valyrian. And so just like that, we have set up the major aspects of Mel. Now, elves have subraces. So these are dark elves, high elves, and wood elves. So if you've ever played Skyrim or any kind of RPG, wood elf is going to be your prototypical archer, your Legolas. This is kind of that archetype for the wood elf. The dark elf is going to be, if you've ever read any of the D&D novels or anything like that, this is your Drizzt Do'Urden. The very dark skin, pale white hair. Oftentimes they are also called drow. Yes, this is Drizzt. Drizzt is your dark elf. And then finally we have High Elf, which is what we're going to use for Mel. High Elves, very good at using magic overall. So they are your typical caster types. If you wanted to, yes, children would be very close to drow. And as you can see, each one of these have different bonuses that they get for being this subrace. So if we look back up at the top, all elves get a +2 to their dexterity score. Every single subclass or subrace gets a +2 to their dexterity score. But as you can see, I'll just use High Elf and Dark Elf as an example. Dark Elves get a +1 to their charisma extra, while High Elves get a +1 to their intelligence score. So being a different subrace might get you bonuses in different stats than another one. So your Drizzt and your Legolas might have different abilities, different stats. Now, Mel is going to get an extra cantrip from the wizard spell list. We'll come back to this later whenever we go over spell casting with Mel. She also gets elven weapon training. So she gets proficiency with longsword, short sword, longbow, and shortbow. Hey Erica, welcome. No worries. We're glad you're here. So, going back to my sheet, where it says other proficiencies in language, I'm just going to add those proficiencies. So instead of language, I'm going to pick weapon, and I'm going to do longsword. Now, you can do this the way that I've been doing them for the languages, where you have a different proficiency for each one, or you can just do them all on the same. So you have a couple different ways of doing it, and here in the in the chat over here. So this is where I'll be rolling. You'll see all kinds of dice rolls and things like that. I can just click this, and it'll show me what all of my weapon proficiencies are. So you can do it like I've done it here, where I've done it for the languages, or you can just put them all in one thing. It's really up to you. Just for brevity, I'm just going to put these in here and just keep them all in one area. And then finally, for Mel, she gets an extra language. So very, very helpful. Intelligent, so she gets a little bit more language. Yes, this is very, yes, that was exactly what I was thinking of. It was Ashai. And now what I can do is I can also just drag and drop these to my preference. I just like to keep all the things together based on how we're seeing them. So I keep my languages together, my weapons together, armor together, etc., etc. And so that's it. We have now just done what class we're going to play and what race we are for 3 different characters. So we have Mel, who is the Wizard High Elf. We have Gregor Clegane, the Goliath Fighter. And then we have Sir Braun of the Blackwater, our human rogue. Now, the next thing that we really want to look at is our classes. Yes, yeah, High Elf, wink wink. Praise Garth. Garth would definitely be a druid. Okay, so now we're going to go and we're going to look at classes. True neutral legend, exactly. So, for classes, we're going to mix it up in our order a little bit because Gregor is actually going to be the easiest one for us to set up as a fighter. He just has the least amount of things that we need to add from the jump, up at first. That works for me because I can just scroll down. Okay. So the fighter. Fighters are well-rounded specialists. They can kind of do anything. If you want your fighter to be an archer, he can be an archer. If you want your fighter to use 2 swords or 2 axes or an axe and a dagger, or you want to be like John and you want to use the hand and a half sword, you can do that. Fighters are very, very flexible and very good for first-time players. Now, I'm not saying everybody should go out and be a fighter, because I want you guys to make characters that you like. I want you to make characters that you're invested in. Now, if that is a fighter, fighters are very good. Fighters are what we would classify as a tank class. So even though they have the ability to, say, do lots of damage very quickly, most fighters are going to be heavier armor, shield, sword, spear. That's kind of the way that fighter operates. You're going to be mixing it up in the front line a lot. Unless you're playing more of like a ranged fighter, which is possible. But there's also the ranger for that. So the ranger really suits at longbow combat, staying in the back line, firing arrows downrange, while the fighter sits up in the front with a shield or his greatsword and absorbs a lot of the incoming attacks. But just know that fighters are well-rounded specialists. You can kind of use them for anything. So, as you can see, we have our level breakdown. So you can look at this and get an idea of what can my character do at first level versus 5th level versus 10th level, 15th level, and 20th level. And those are the tiers of play. So your characters 1 through 5 are going to be in tier 1. This is what I call the village hero. The village hero phase. You're still relatively unknown. You might still be doing your first quest. That's okay. That's what this tier is for. You are building a name. You're building experience. You're building a reputation. When you get to this 6 to 10, then you might be a city name. You kind of have a name for yourself. If I used John as an example, level 1 through 5 is him as the boy in Castle Black. And he's training with Pip and Grin and Sam, and he's learning some things from Maester Aemond, and he's building his skills and he's building his reputation. Now, once John hits 6th level, from his, say, 6th to 10th level, this is like John beyond the wall. John with Corin Halfhand. This is where he's really kind of putting his skills to the test. He's known. He has a reputation. He is Lord Mormont's personal squire. He's being groomed for leadership. From the 10 to 15 range, this is what I would call John the Lord Commander. He is very well known. He has taken a very prominent position in his order. People know him. People even outside of the region now know him. Cersei Lannister is wondering if she should send assassins to go kill Jon Snow. That is the level of notoriety that he has in this 3rd tier of play. And then from your 15 to your 20, even though we haven't gotten it in the books yet, this would be like your Jonathan Targaryen. He's come back from the dead. He is a Targaryen prince. He's riding a dragon. He is a game-changing figure in the world. That's just a way that I would describe the tiers of play and put them into relation to A Song of Ice and Fire with one specific character who we know is going to have a very long-term story growth. So it's kind of this learning, applying what you've learned, taking the next step into this higher echelon of the world, and then becoming, say, a world-class adventurer. So in theory, you could build your character from level 1 to level 20 as soon as you get done here with me. You could plan out everything that you want your character to be. That's okay. You can be thinking ahead on that. And that'll help you and help your DM maybe plan some things for the future. Or help give you some tips on certain abilities that you might want to take, or certain feats, or how you should apply your skills to best suit what you want to do for your character. So, when we look at our book, the big thing that we're going to look at first is our class features. Class features are your bread and butter. This is what you're going to be using probably more than anything in the entire game, is your class features and your stats. So, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start building character. We're going to start building those stats. Now, with Gregor Clegane, before I say that, I should preface this. There are 3 different ways to make your character and build your stats. Those are the standard array, the point buy system, and rolling for stats. Now, the standard array is going to be the easiest way for you to set up your character from the jump. And since we're making Gregor more standard, we're going to use the standard array. Now, the way that you set up the standard array is it is 15, 14, 13, 11, 10, and 8. Now, what do I mean by that? So if we go over to our character sheet, you see we have 6 stats. 6 stats, 6 numbers. And we're just going to input each one of those numbers into a particular stat. Now, if we go to the player's handbook, it will tell you, based on something like saving throws or the quick build, what you should kind of focus on when doing your stats. What are your important stats? So for us, I shouldn't have got rid of Goliath so soon. So for us, when we look at our race, we get to increase one score by 2 and a different score by 1. So, on top of these numbers that I've posted, 15, 14, 13, 11, 10, 8, there's going to be one stat that we can add 2 points into, and another stat that we can add 1 point into. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Wisan. So, how do I know how good I'm going to be at each stat? So, every stat starts out at 10. And a 10 is a +0 modifier. As you can see here, if I just roll my strength, I rolled with advantage, but I scroll over my number on the left, I rolled an 18 on the dice. And an 18 plus 0 is 18. So how do I boost these numbers up? Well, that's what you add your stat points for. So every 2 points that you increase into a stat, the stat goes up by 1. 12 is a +1. 14 is a +2. 16 is a +3. 18 is a +4. And 20 is a +5. 20 is the hard cap for most stats. Now, there are some magic items, things in the game, that will allow you to boost past this cap of 20. But those are few and far between. So when you're building your character, think of the maximum that your stat can be is a 20. That is, you are the best at it. You are a world-class, world-class bodybuilder if you have a 20 in strength. So, for Gregor, using our standard stat array, it's actually going to be better if we put 14 into our strength. For fighter, especially with Gregor, stat minus 10 divided by 3. Yes. Or by 2. Yeah, by 2. So, for Gregor, we're making him like Gregor Clegane. Big, strong, huge greatsword, heavy armor. So we want to really focus in strength. So why wouldn't I put my highest stat as the stat that I want the best? Because of my racial ability score increase. So if I put it at 14, I can increase one score by 2. And I'll make that my strength. So now my strength goes from 14 to 16. And now I've reserved that 15 for a different stat. And again, you can mix and match these however you want. You can play around with it however you want. Just whatever makes you feel most comfortable. So, for Gregor, just so we can get another bonus, we're going to put our Constitution at 13. And because we get that +1 in another stat, our 13 goes to 14. So we've jumped that Constitution from +1 to +2. Now we can really have a lot of flexibility. Now, I've shown you what you want to do for your good stats. Now, you might also have what's called a dump stat. This is your bad stat. Especially if you're doing standard array, you see that one of these numbers is an 8. Now, what does that mean for my rolling? Well, we know Gregor Clegane, not exactly the smartest dude, and definitely not the smartest dude once he becomes zombified. So we're going to make his intelligence an 8. Now, what does that do to his intelligence score? It actually makes it a -1. So every time I have to make an intelligence roll, you'll see that it's my d20 roll, which in this case was a 4, -1. So you can actually use this as a character quirk. Sorry, just need to change this real fast. So you can actually make it a character quirk in some ways. I've played characters who are not charismatic, and charisma is the dump stat. And sometimes when that happens, some very funny situations can occur when you're forced to make a roll with your bad stat. D&D is not just Exactly, Kimber. So, say with my dexterity, I make it 15. It still only makes it a +2. Because in D&D, you round down on rolls. So, 15 is between 14 and 13, so it's technically a 2.5, but that rounds down to a 2. We usually only operate in whole numbers, and it's always rounded down. And that's just to make it a little bit more, fair. You always want to get hit for one less damage than one more damage, because that could be the make or break between you being conscious and unconscious. So generally, just rounding down is the rule in D&D. So, for Gregor, he's not exactly super charismatic, so we're going to leave that as his 10 stat. And I would say he's probably more wise than charismatic, so we'll make his wisdom an 11. So here we are. We have set up our stats for Gregor Clegane using just the standard array. He's going to have 16 strength, giving him a +3 modifier, 15 dexterity, which is going to give him a +2, 14 constitution, which will also give him a +2, 8 intelligence, because he's not the smartest guy around, and he's arguably got zombie brain. Wisdom, he's not really super wise. He might be a little perceptive, might be decent at insight, but we know Gregor is more of a bruiser than a talker. And then his charisma, flat 10. Yeah, he might have no brain at all. Exactly, Erica. So now we want to go through the other side. So, his hit dice is 1d10. So we'll change our hit die to d10, total of 1. And we'll put 1 in because he hasn't used it. 1d10. Now, his HP at first level is 10 plus his Constitution modifier. So Constitution is a good secondary stat for pretty much any class because it's tied to your HP. So for Gregor, he gets 10 plus 2, which is his Constitution modifier, which makes it 12. Now, what do these hit die do? Say I have taken damage in battle, and I'm at 7 of 12 HP. Me and my companions have decided, hey, we want to take a short rest. So we can kind of catch our breath, compose ourselves, and figure out what our next move is going to be. What I can do is I can actually roll this hit dice and get that HP back. And it's going to roll that hit die, which in this case is a d10, and it's going to add my Constitution modifier to it. So in this case, I heal for 6 HP, which puts me back up to my maximum of 12. Now, when I do this, I'm going to mark off my hit die. I've used it. Now, it's not gone forever. When I take that long rest that we talked about with Mel, I will actually get half of my hit die back at a minimum of 1. So when I take a long rest, you'll see my hit die refreshes. So these are good usable ways to heal yourself between battles without using extra resources. And you'll know that they come back every day, or at least some of them will come back every day. So that's how we do health. That's how we do hit die. Now, when we level up, there are 2 ways that we can increase our health. We can either choose to roll this hit die. In this case, when I go, say I leveled up from level 1 to level 2, I roll that 1 hit die, and I just add that to my maximum HP. So I was at 12, I'm now at 23. And then I will just add another hit die. I get 1 hit die per level in any class. So, no, you're fine. You're fine, Kimmer. So, whenever I level up, I get an extra hit die in whatever class I'm taking. So, if I take another level in fighter, I will get an extra fighter hit die. And I'll level up my health according to what class I'm leveling up in. So for people who have heard of multi-classing before, say I took Gregor and instead of leveling him up in fighter again, so making him a level 2 fighter, I make him a level 1 fighter and a level 1 barbarian. So we can get access to that sweet rage. I'm actually going to have 2 different sets of hit dice. I'm going to have 1 set of hit dice that is for fighter, and I'm going to have 1 set of hit dice that is for barbarian. Now, barbarian, they get the maximum amount of hit die, which is a d12. So instead of rolling a 10, I would roll a 12. In this case, I got a 7, so I would increase my HP by 9. So, if you want to multi-class and you want to think about multi-classing, that's okay. Just know that your HP and your hit die might be different than somebody who is just single class. Now, for new players, I recommend just playing 1 class, playing single class, because it helps you really get a focus for how you want to do things. But don't let that restrict you. That's just a beginner's thing that I like to suggest, because if you're just focused on one class, you can really get everything out of that class and understand it front and back, instead of trying to split your attention between two classes, and you might get confused. How many hit die do I have? What abilities do I have? Now, again, feel free to do that, because me personally, I love making multi-class characters. They aren't necessarily as top-end powerful as some of the single-class characters, but you can have a lot more variety and a lot more options if you do multi-class. And we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that in our part 2. What does multi-classing look like? How does it affect what I'm trying to do? Things like that. But for right now, we're just going to stick to single class because we're just level 1. So, next thing that we're going to want to do is look at our proficiencies. So, with fighters, it's really easy. They get access to everything. So, they get access to all armor, all shields, all simple weapons, all martial weapons. So, in our proficiencies, we're just going to put that down here. And I'm just going to make this armor. Just all armor and shields. And then weapons, simple weapons, and martial weapons. This weapon. And boom, we're done with our proficiencies. Because we don't get any tools. So tools are specialized sets of items that can help you do different things. We'll get back to this whenever we talk about Braun, because he will have a few tools that he will be very good at using. And then our saving throws. So we mentioned this earlier. Saving throws are things to help us overcome negative effects. So here we have strength and we have constitution. We just put a check mark beside those. And as you see, those go from +3 to +5 and +2 to +4. Now, why does it do that? Because of this thing right here called proficiency bonus. So anything that you are proficient in, you get to add this little number, in this case 2, to what you are good at, to what you are proficient in. Now, as you level up, your proficiency bonus will eventually increase from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. As you get into those higher levels, higher tiers of play that we talked about earlier. Now, when we go down, now it's asking us to choose skills. So we can choose 2 skills from this list here. Acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival. So for this, we're going to make this a little bit easy. We're going to go athletics and intimidation. Gregor, very big guy, very imposing, very intimidating. And when we check those off, you see that, again, our score just goes up by 2. Now, each one of these skills, as you can see beside it, is tied to a different one of our stats on the left. Acrobatics is a dexterity stat. This is like keeping balance, landing on your feet, covering large gaps, things like that. Animal handling is actually a wisdom skill, and this is for exactly what you think it is. It's handling animals, controlling your horse, backing down a pack of wolves, wrestling a bull. Controlling any kind of animal is going to be related to animal handling. Arcana is an intelligence score based, and this is trying to understand anything magical. What kind of school of magic a spell is, what kind of effect something might have, that's all intelligence based on your intellect. Athletics is big, strong man does strong thing. Kicking doors in, lifting big things, climbing large cliffs, all of that is athletics. Deception is charisma. This is lying. This is basically your lie stat. You want to deceive, you want to lie, you will most likely be rolling a lot of deception. History is remembering things. Yes, your poker face, exactly. History is remembering things from a historical standpoint. Who won that battle? You know, who won the Battle of the Bells? Who was fighting in that battle? Trying to remember historical figures. You know, what happened to that king from 200 years ago? How did Darren the Good die? Trying to remember those things. That's all going to be history. So I just talked about deception. Insight is kind of the other side of that. This is your detect BS. Trying to figure out if somebody's lying, trying to figure out somebody's intentions. That's really going to go into insight, and that's a wisdom stat. Intimidation is your second of the three major charisma stats, and that's intimidating people. Puffing out your chest, looming over them, you're trying to scare somebody. That's definitely what intimidation is for. Investigation is an intellect stat, another intellect stat. And this is your search for clues. If you are really trying to search an area for clues or search an area for items, things like that, investigation is going to be your main stat. Medicine is a wisdom skill. This is trying to figure out what somebody's sick with, how you can help them. You know, say somebody's arm is broken in the field, you might make a medicine check to try and reset the bone. Or if a poor old lady is sick from some unknown disease and they don't know what it is, you might use your medicine knowledge to try and figure out an herbal remedy to try and help this person feel better. Your medicine check would be like making a dose of moon tea. You don't want to roll really bad on it, because then you might get a situation like Lysa Arryn, where she gets really, really sick from this poultice, this tea. So having that medical knowledge to be able to correctly create the medicine or identify what the problem is what you're really going to be using medicine for. Nature, on the other hand, I know nature and medicine might sound kind of similar, but nature is going to be identifying herbs, plants, what are the patterns of certain kind of animals, things like that. You're really going to be looking at nature. This is just knowledge of the natural world. Perception is what you can see and hear, what you can perceive. Kimber's got a question. Not sure how to express this, but I feel like it's important to point out new players that scores and rolls can change what we might think of as book characters if playing the one role, Gregor for example, and nearly 8 feet tall, might have a much stronger constitution than what the character sheet portrays. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is just all archetypes, what I'm doing here. Creating a big burly guy, a quick thievy guy, and a caster, a wizardy type. Yeah, obviously we would, like, Gregor's strength would probably be at least, 20 if not higher, potentially. Or his constitution would be 20 if not higher. And also we know that scores and rolls are variable. So D&D is a random game. So, like, I can roll 2 strength rolls for Gregor, and look at that. One of them was a critical 20 out of 23, and the other one's a 10. And that might be the difference between passing and failing a roll. And it's not that he's not strong. We can see that he's strong. He's got a 16 strength. That's a very high score for a level 1 character. But just knowing that there can be variation in variables on the dice. Not everybody succeeds on everything every time. Great point, Kimmer. Okay. So perception is what you can see, what you can hear. This also ties into passive perception. So there's active perception. If you are actively trying to look for something or actively trying to hear something, this could be like searching the horizon for enemies, or putting your ear to a door to see try and hear what's on the other side. Passive perception might just be as you're walking down a hallway. Gregor has very low passive perception, so he might not see the trap that's in front of him if he's just walking and not actively looking for it. So there are 2 different types of perception. So just keep that in mind if you are actively trying to perceive something or if you're just passively trying to perceive something. And your passive perception will increase as your perception roll score goes up. So as you can see, if he were proficient in perception, that 10 goes to a 12 because he just has a +2 modifier. Performance. This is for all my bards out there. Singing, poetry, playing instruments, all that good stuff that makes a bard, this is going to be your skill. And this is a charisma-based skill. This is the one charisma-based skill that is not based on talking. This is about doing. So you want to hop up on the tavern table and dance, you'll make a performance check. You want to play your lute to try and serenade the women in the tavern, you'll most likely make a performance check. This is just kind of your catch-all for the bards. This is going to be your bread and butter skill. Yeah, exactly. Or, you get your tom of 7 strings, Or Marillion the Bard. His performance check was so good that he was Lady Lys's personal bard. Your persuasion is your last of the talking charisma skills. And this is trying to convince somebody. Also, going back to the bards, this is usually the seduce skill as well. When people say, you roll to seduce the dragon, you're most likely going to make a persuasion check. So your 3 major talking skills are all based on charisma. And that's deception, which is lying, intimidation, which is trying to scare or intimidate, and then persuasion, which is trying to persuade. Religion, this is knowledge of the gods. So knowledge of the gods, you find an altar to a god that you aren't aware of from the jump, you would make a religion roll to try and understand more about what this altar is, what god is it to, based on things like symbols, iconography. This might also be studying religious text, things like that. And that's a wisdom skill. Or, sorry, that's an intelligence skill. And then our last 3 skills, the S's. These are some of my favorite skills for characters that I usually play. That is Sleight of Hand, which is a dexterity roll. Maesters are clerics, in a way. Yes. I would say a maester could be a cleric, could also be like a wizard or a sorcerer. You could kind of play with what maesters would be. Because maesters are kind of in the middle. Septons would definitely be clerics. A maester could kind of be a little bit variable between some of the casting classes. Because you could have a maester who's more of a priest like Bonero and Mel. I view Mel more as a wizard because that's where you're getting a lot of the fire and, you know, the real magic. So, you know, you could be the 3 major like arcane casting classes that I would put people like Bonero and Mel and the warlocks in are wizard, sorcerer, and warlock. Those all kind of have different flavors to them, but they all kind of draw from the same spell pool. Yeah, you absolutely could be a rogue as a maester. I think that would definitely work. Because maesters can also be politics, you know, politicians, like a Pycelle. Yes, so I'm not making a cleric this time, but when you pick a cleric, generally you pick a... I'm trying to think of what it's called. It's not a school, but... Sorry, hold on one second. It's going to bug me if I... Divine Domain. That's what it's called. Yes, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so divine domains are based on different schools and gods. And then if you were, say, you wanted to be a warlock, warlocks are given their power by some outside force. So this could be the old ones, you know, demons, devils, fae. You basically have your powers on loan. So depending on how you want to play it, you could play Melisandre as a wizard, you could play her as a warlock, or you could play her as a sorcerer. It's really just preference. Okay, sorry, where was I? All right, any other questions? Kimberly, great question so far. Thank you so much. Okay, so sleight of hand, this is your pickpocket lockpick. Yes, yeah. Warlock would work well for Mel as well. I almost think somebody like Thoros of Myr would maybe be a better warlock archetype, because his powers really are on loan, while Melisandre's a little more adept. But again, it's flavor and preference in a lot of these cases. So for my rogues out there, sleight of hand is going to be your best friend. Yes, necromancy is actually a subclass of wizards. But there is tons of room for necromancy in the game. Across a couple different classes, actually. The main ones would be the spellcasters that we talked about, and then druids can also do a little bit of necromancy as well. The children creating others kind of deal. Yes, yes, that's another good one. Yeah, Thoris with the last kiss. Yeah. And then there's also some resurrection magic. So if you say you wanted to play Thoros as a cleric, you could do that. Really, you're only limited to your imagination and what you kind of want the character to do and what class you think fits best for that. So, finish running down the skills real fast. Sleight of hand is for all my rogues out there. This is your picking pockets. This is your cracking locks. All that good stuff. You want to quick fingers and 5-finger fillet, or what is it that the Ironborn play where they throw the axes, the knife dance, I believe. That's all going to be like your sleight of hands and stuff like that. Yeah, the 5-finger discount, exactly. Yeah, you're stealing, you're thieving. I think probably Jaqen H'ghar. I think he would probably be the best example of a George rogue. Because that would tie in directly with our next stat, which is stealth. This is just trying to stay hidden, moving through shadows. Your stealthy boys, your rogues, your sleight of hand and your stealth are going to be your best friends. Yeah. Definitely Jaqen is the one that comes to mind for me. Yeah, picking locks, yeah. Getting into places that you're not really supposed to be. That's the whole sleight of hand deal. And then our last one is survival. Survival is exactly kind of what it sounds like, but it also has another added feature to it. So, survival might be starting a fire in the middle of the woods, finding out if water is drinkable. That might also go into nature. But basically your general survival, figuring out what direction you need to go. All of that's going to be tied to survival. And then survival is also tracking. So say you're 2 days behind this group that you are pursuing. You might do survival to try and make sure that you can keep their tracks. That's kind of what survival is going to mostly play into. Yes, bushcraft, exactly. Great way to describe it. And that's the basic rundown of the major stats, or the major skills. I'm sorry. So when we look at Gregor, it says it gives us 2 from this list. Based on just what we're going for with our archetype, athletics and intimidation are going to kind of be our best friends here. Sorry, pull these up real quick because we're going to equipment. So here in the book, it tells us we just get starting equipment. It gives us our starting equipment for us. Now, if you want, and your DM allows, you can also roll for starting gold. But generally, I just say go for the starting equipment because you're not going to get as much money rolling for gold than you would just from the cost of the starting equipment and what it's going to be. So for here, we actually get 2 options. So I told you guys that there are lots of different ways that you can build a fighter, and it kind of gives you that option in the equipment. Now, Gregor, we know he's a great sword fighter. Big burly guy, heavy armor in the front. So we're going to pick the chainmail. Now, these are also in the SRD and they're in the handbook. Roll20 just gives you a really great way of looking at it. It gives it to you all in a chart. So we just look at what we get, which is chainmail. And we go under heavy armor, and here's chainmail. Now, it gives our AC, or armor class, as 16. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our armor class up here to 16. Now here in Roll20, I have the wonderful option of just being able to drag and drop. And it will add it into my equipment for me, and it will change my armor class for me. But just know there is a very handy reference sheet. And really you have armor in 3 categories. Now, not every class can wear every kind of armor. Not every class can use shields. It's all based on those proficiencies that we talked about before. Now, since Gregor is a fighter, he has access to all armor. Yes, higher is now better. Because when we get into combat, this is the number that enemies need to meet or beat to hit us. And I know that sounded kind of weird, but meet or beat. So they need to either hit 16 or get above 16 to do any kind of damage to us. Yeah, definitely more simplified. Now, there are ways to hit people without using armor class. Yes, equal to or higher. So there are ways to hit people without going through armor class, and that's mostly through certain kinds of spells or poisons, things like that. But then that goes back to our saving throws. And each spell will have a different saving throw attached to it. So we've done armor. Now we need to do our weapon. So for Gregor, I say we're most likely going to go with a martial weapon and a shield. But we know Gregor Clegane, he uses a greatsword. And now, weapons are actually classified very differently. So, we have simple melee weapons, things like clubs, daggers, hand axes, javelins. A lot of these things can be thrown and are very light weapons. And I'll go through what all of these weapon properties are in just a second. We have simple melee weapons. We have simple ranged weapons. This is your short bow, your light crossbow, throwing a poison dagger, or David and Goliath, using the sling. Martial melee weapons are where you're getting the big boys. Battle axes, flails, long swords, morning stars, great swords, scimitars, tridents, warhammers. You have tons of options when it comes to martial weapons. And then you have martial ranged weapons. These are your bigger Yeah, Brienne would be a very, very fun character archetype to try and play as well. And then your martial ranged weapons, this is the heavy crossbows. The hand crossbow is also under this because it's considered a precision weapon. Your longbows, your heavy crossbows, the net. So say you wanted to play a gladiator type character you could use a trident and a net. That's a possibility. So you can kind of customize what weapons you want to use and how you want to use them. For us, we're going to use a greatsword for Gregor, which is a 2d6 slashing weapon. So the three major types of damage that you'll see from weapons are slashing, piercing, and then bludgeoning. And those are exactly as you would think. Slashing weapons slash, piercing weapons poke, bludgeoning weapons crush. Now, looking at the weapon properties, there are a couple of different properties that actually alter the way that your weapons work. So, if a weapon has ammunition, that just means you need ammo to fire it. If you have a longbow and you have 20 arrows, that means that you can fire that longbow 20 times before you need to either buy more ammunition or recover your ammunition. Generally, with arrows, they're a little bit easier to recover than bolts. So just keep that in mind for whatever kind of weapon that you want to use if you want to use a ranged weapon. Finesse weapons are really good because they give you a lot of variety in how you can use them. So when you make an attack with a finesse weapon, you can use strength or you can use dexterity. So if you are more of a dexterous character than a strength character, you might want to prioritize a weapon that has the finesse property. So it can give you more variety in how you use it. Heavy and light are exactly as they sound. Heavy weapons, if you are a small creature, that means if you are my halflings, my gnomes, my short kings out there, if you want to try and use a greatsword, it's going to have some penalties. Mainly, that just means disadvantage on attack rolls. So you would roll 2 dice, and you would take the lower of those 2 numbers. Now, do not let this dissuade you from playing a small character who uses a heavy weapon. One of the best characters that I have ever played was a halfling who used a greatsword. His greatsword was his wife, and he loved it. And I had so much fun playing that character, even if I did make rolls with disadvantage. It was about the flavor of the character. So, yes, you absolutely could do nets and tridents as a Howland Reed character. Blowguns with poison darts. So, like, the weapons give you so much variety to really, really craft your character and your play style however you want. So, heavy weapons, size and bulk make it too large for a small creature to effectively use. Really relatable. Now, light weapons are very easy to handle. This means that you could use 2 of them in the same turn. So, everybody's favorite man from Gin Alley, Carl Tanner, he uses 2 daggers. Uses them very effectively, very light. So if you are playing more of like a rogue, Sam, thanks for coming, man. Appreciate you hopping in. So if you want to create a character who uses a lot of attacks, light weapons might be the way to go. Loading and range are mainly just, yes, Sir Sam. We shall see you again. Thank you so much. So loading is really only applies to crossbows, and that just means when you shoot it, you have to load it. And so because of that, you can generally only make one attack per turn with a weapon that has loading. Unless you have something special that lets you make more than one. Range is exactly as it sounds. This is the range, the effective range of your weapons. And usually there are two numbers to this. When we put Gregor's ranged weapons in, you'll see what I'm talking about here. But the range list has two numbers. One is the normal range, one is the long range. Weapons with reach, they have that. They just have reach. It adds an additional 5 feet to your reach when you attack with it, as well as determining opportunity attacks with it. We'll get more into that into the next session when we do White Room combat, what that kind of looks like. But just know that if you have a weapon with reach, like your tridents, you can attack a little bit farther out. And then special weapons have a special property that is really just, like the net. The net has a special property to it, and you basically just look up what that special property is. Thrown weapons mean that you can throw it. You can throw hand axes, you can throw daggers, and you would treat those with the range of any normal weapon. They have a normal range and a long range. Two-handed weapons, pretty self-explanatory. Again, you need two hands to use it. Yes, Asha. Asha is a great example of using thrown weapons. Yeah, playing the finger dance. Throwing axes, throwing daggers. And for this, you would mostly use strength if you're using something like a hand axe, but if you throw a dagger, you can use strength or dexterity. Versatile weapons. This is my Jon Snows out there. So this is a weapon that can be used in one or two hands. This is your hand and a half sword. So Jon uses Longclaw. Jon uses Longclaw in one hand, but then sometimes he uses it in two hands. What this means is if you have a weapon that is versatile and you use it in one hand, it does one amount of damage. And then if you use it in two hands, it usually does a higher amount of damage. So for long swords, that's a D8 dice versus a D10 dice. So you can potentially get more damage if you're using a versatile weapon with two hands. And then improvised weapons, this is more of, like it says here, broken glass, a table leg, a frying pan. You want to beat a guy with his own arm. You want to throw a dead goblin into a dead goblin. Those are going to be your improvised weapons. Yeah, throw a rock, exactly. Anything like that's going to be in your improvised weapons category. Now, with Gregor, we're going to use a greatsword, which is 2d6 slashing for damage. 2d6 slashing just means that if we hit, we are just going to roll two regular six-sided die. And then you're going to add your strength modifier to that. So for here, we are going to add a greatsword. And again, I'm just pulling these from the free basic rules that they have on Roll20. It's the same thing that's in the SRD, same thing that's in the player handbook. Oh. Maybe. There it goes. Okay. And so now that I've added the greatsword in, you can see it's actually populated this on my character sheet for me. So my greatsword has an attack, which is just a d20 roll. Most of your attack rolls, most of your rolls in the game are going to be using the d20. That's your 20-sided die. That's the one that we all use for the emotes. Now, when I make an attack roll with my greatsword, I'm going to add my strength modifier to that. So in this case, it's a +3, because I have 16 strength for Gregor. Now, Gregor is also proficient with this weapon, which means he's going to add an additional +2, giving him a +5 to his ability to hit. As you can see here, +5. Now, if I hit, I'm going to roll the damage, which is 2d6 +3. So here, if I roll the damage, or I roll the attack, you can see I rolled a 19 to hit. 14 +3 +2. And then when I roll the damage, that's a very high roll, that's almost maximum damage. It's going to show me what my 2d6 have rolled. In this case, it's a 6 and a 5, and I add the 3 to that. Very simple. You're basically just rolling your d20, and then you're adding your additional modifiers. Usually very quick math. So, in this case, we get a martial weapon and a shield. Now, shields are really good because they will actually add to your AC. They'll add to your armor class. So I'm just going to toss a shield in here. Oh, that's... sorry. Nope, that's not the regular shield. Oh well, I'll just add shield in here. That's not a big deal. But just know if you have a shield and you have it equipped, it's going to give you an additional +2 to that AC. So if Gregor had a shield equipped, he would have 18 AC instead of 16 AC. But since the greatsword is a two-handed weapon, he can't use a shield at the same time. Our last things are a light crossbow and 20 bolts or 2 hand axes. In this case, I'm just going to do 2 hand axes because it's not really what he's going to mainly be using. Oh, I guess it's one word. Apologies. Hand axe. Hand axe. And as you can see, it's calculating it the same, but instead of 1d or 2d6 like my greatsword, it's only doing 1d6. Okay. And then a Dungeoneer's pack and an Explorer's pack. These are very similar. They're both basically just 2 item pouches. They come with a certain set of items. You can look up Dungeoneer's pack versus Explorer's pack and see which one you want the most. They both have different utility, but it's mostly just things like a bedroll, a mess kit, things like that. So we're just going to pick Explorer's pack for brevity. Yes, ropes, torches, yep, all of that stuff. Exactly. Okay, so now we have we've got his stats, we've got his HP, we've got his armor, we've got his weapons, his skills. We have everything that makes him fit for combat. Now we're just going to add in his abilities as a fighter. So the good thing for fighter is he only starts off with 2 different abilities. One of those is a fighting style. And again, this is a particular style of fighting. As you can see, there are a lot of different ones. The one that we're going to pick specifically is Great Weapon Fighter. And this just allows us to reroll our damage if we do something bad. So like, I rolled a 6 and a 5 on my greatsword damage. If one of those had been a 1 or a 2, I could have re-rolled that with great weapon fighting. So that is just mostly up to you. And that's a class feature. So boom, we have great weapon fighting in there. And then our second one is what's called Second Wind. So with our bonus action, we can basically give ourselves a little bit of a heal in the middle of combat. And we'll just post that in there as well. Yes. Nat 1s and critical hits are still relevant. I was going to go over that in the in our session 2, where we do more of the combat stuff. Nat 1s and critical hits. But yes, they are still relevant. Absolutely. And now, if we want to, where it says class resources, I could put Second Wind. And I know that I just have one use of that. And that's it. We have made Gregor. Gregor is done. He is a level 1 fighter Goliath. We have his stats set. We have his armor class, his initiative, his speed, his HP, his hit dice, all of his weapons, his abilities, his skills, proficiencies, saving throws. All of that is done. This is a complete level 1 character. Now, our other 2 characters, I'll run through a lot of the minutia that we just did a little bit quicker, just for the sake of time. But just know that if you were to make a character like this, at this point, you're done. You're done. You can go in and you can... there is one last thing that we need to do. But we'll get to that in a second. But basically, we're done. Except for one thing, which is background. We need to select a background. But we'll do that in a minute after we're done with Mel and Braun. We'll come back and we'll pick backgrounds for each of them. And just so I can show you what backgrounds are. But effectively, we're done with this character. So, if we go to Braun, Sir Braun of the Blackwater, I'm going to go back up to the top, just so I can... Oh. Probably because I have so many things open. Get rid of Golbeth. Get rid of Cleric. I do need that. I don't need this. Okay, so with Braun, we know that he's a rogue. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our handy dandy PHB or SRD, and we're going to go down to rogue. Again, rogues are skill, precision, shady, things like that. And again, as we see here, most of this is going to look similar to what we did with Gregor, but the class features are just going to be a little bit different. So with a rogue, with Braun, instead of getting that D10 hit dice, he only gets a D8. And that means that we now need to set his stat points as well. So this is the second of 2 ways that you can actually set stats. And this is what is called point buy. Now, effectively, what point buy is you get 27 points to distribute among your stats however you see fit. I have a really great website that does this for you. It's called Chicken Dinner. I will post this in the player resources. So if your DM wants to use point buy calculator, this is the best point buy calculator on the market. It's free. Everything I'm going to give you guys is free. Roll20 is free. All of this is free. So you can feel free to use these at your discretion. So what we're going to do is we're just going to choose our race. In this case, Braun is a human. Here on Chicken Dinner, it'll give you all of the races from all of the books. If you don't have any of those supplemental books, it's not a big deal. But with human, as we said before, it's going to give us a +1 to everything. Now, if we look at rogues, our main skills here are going to be things like dexterity, intelligence, and charisma. So those are the things that we're mostly going to focus on. So we're going to boost our dexterity, and as you see, as I increase my dexterity, my total points in the corner goes up. And again, this is factoring in our racial bonus of +1 to everything. So I usually say 16 is a good number to start with because you can't go higher than 16 to start. So you want your best stat to be 16. So we know Braun is very charismatic, so we want to have some charisma as well. We want intelligence, so we can do things like investigate, making sure that we see all the angles, so we want a little bit of wisdom as well. And we know Braun is not that strong, so we don't want to give him too much. So we can have strength be our dump stat. You can't go lower than an 8, and you can't go higher than 16. So even though we're losing out here, say we might want to make intelligence 1 less, so we can get our constitution up a little bit. So I think that this looks pretty good for Braun. He's got some wisdom. He's got some insight. He knows how to read people. He's also a talker, as Sandor Clegane would call him. He does have a little bit of intelligence, but he's not super smart. And if anything, we could bump down his intelligence so we don't have any negatives. Or we could bump down so we have an extra point in our constitution. I actually think that this might be a little better so we get a little more HP. Because again, our constitution stat is going to be tied to our HP, and I like round numbers. Again, our strength is going to be our dump stat anyway, so the fact that it's a 9, it's not that big of a deal. But the rest of our stats are pretty good here. This is a very well-rounded character. So we're just going to input that for Braun. 9. 16. 14. 12. 9, 16, 14, 12, 14, 14. So Braun, very much a jack of all trades. Yeah, usually you wouldn't think so. Like, yeah, you would think like, oh, I don't want my strength to be a dump stat, but when we think of Braun, we don't really think of him as this big, burly guy. He's nimble, he's quick. So this really helps focus in on that idea that we want to go with. So we have our stats. Ran through them very quick. Again, I'll give you guys the link to the point buy calculator so you have this later if this is how you want to do your character. The point buy gives you a little bit more flexibility. Lythe thinks quick on his feet, uses his environment to his advantage. Yes, exactly. Tyrion's trial by combat. Awesome, awesome example. Okay, So now we're just going to go into his proficiencies. So Braun only has access to light armor. So while Gregor had access to every kind of armor, Braun only has access to light armor. And that's going to affect how our AC looks. Yeah, rip Knight's Queen symbol. So his weapons, also more limited than Gregor. He gets access to simple weapons, hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. I know we saw Braun fire the fire arrow at the Battle of the Blackwater. Yeah, I could see that as well. Whenever I think of Braun, I think of his quips. And I also look back. This might have been like a show only thing, but when he's before the Battle of the Blackwater with him and Sandor, and he's singing songs. He's singing about the Dornishman's wife. But yeah. Yeah, this might be more of a show Braun. But yeah, I picture him singing the Dornishman's wife, and he's got the quips and things like that. He has a wit about him. So, for our weapons, we're going to add those in. Yes, great thing about D&D, both can be right. He has simple weapons. Hand crossbows, long swords, rapiers, and short swords. Saving throws are dexterity and intelligence, which is, again, thinking on our feet, nimble, like Wisan said, using the environment to our advantage. Definitely that quick thinking. Now, he also gets proficiency in Thieves' Tools. This is how we break locks in the game, is by using Thieves' Tools. I always misspell thieves. So, for this, now, Roll20 just gives you an ability to query the attribute that you want to use for this, but for the most part, you're going to use Thieves' Tools with Dexterity. But this just gives you the option. I do this with all of the tool proficiencies. I just set it to Query, because you can use tools in different ways in D&D. It doesn't necessarily have to be with one specific stat. So this would just allow you to select what stat you want to use, but typically you're going to use these tools with Dexterity. And again, this is your lockpick. This is your breaking and entering tools, your burglar's kit, so to speak. Now, what we saw with Gregor, he only got access to 2 skills that we saw from that list. Braun, on the other hand, is going to get access to 4 skills on this list. As you can see, some of these skills are the same. Athletics, acrobatics, intimidation. I think I saw history, or yes, acrobatics, athletics, intimidation. You see that those are kind of similar to what we saw on Gregor's, but Braun has access to different skills as well. Sleight of hand, stealth, perception, insight, deception. So depending on what class you pick, you'll have access to different sets of skills and the number of skills that you can actually choose from. So here we get access to 4 different skills. So we're going to pick the rogue's favorites, sleight of hand and stealth, which is really going to boost our ability to do some of these roguish things that we want our rogue to do. Now, for me, I always think a rogue is very good to have perception. And especially if we're talking about Braun, he's very good at reading the lay of the land. And, again, also very light on his feet. So acrobatics could also be good. Now, if you wanted to, you could say drop perception for investigation. Or you could drop perception for insight. Braun is very good at detecting BS. Or, if you want, you could maybe have both, insight and perception. And you could drop something like, say, acrobatics. Because I know I'm already pretty decent in acrobatics. Do I really need that +2 there? Or do I want it in a different stat to boost that up? So that's kind of the whole thing with min-maxing. You don't have to necessarily pick, oh, well, I'm proficient in all of my good stats. You might say, well, I'm already good in this stat. Might as well make myself a little bit better in this stat. So there's a lot of options, lots of variables that you can do when looking at that. So those are our 4 skills that we're going to choose. Stealth, sleight of hand, perception, acrobatics. Very good set of skills for a rogue to have. Very good base for him to grow on. Now, with an equipment, I always think of at least show Braun. He always has that dagger on his back. And very adept with a sword. So I think that that's what we're mainly going to go for. We're going to go for a short sword and dagger combo. Or in this case, it gives us 2 short swords. We don't really know Braun to use much ranged combat, other than when he shoots that one arrow at the Blackwater, and that's not even in the books, because it's all the chain. So with Braun, I think using a quick way of attacking, where Braun can get multiple attacks in, basically like a hit-and-run character. So we're going to give him 2 short swords. He's also going to get a burglar's pack. We're going to give him a burglar's pack just because it's a little bit different flavor-wise. Oh, actually, never mind. He gets 2 daggers. So we're actually going to give him a short sword and a short bow. Oh, that was proficiencies. Okay, I see where I was messing up before. Short sword. Short bow. Gotta get him some arrows for that short bow. And when you drop in a thing of arrows like this, you can just change the quantity to 20. Just like that. And we're just going to put that in our class resources as well, just to make it easier to track as we're going along. 20, 20. And when we fire, we can just mark these down. Super simple, super easy. He is going to get leather armor. So that's only going to give him an 11 starting out, but he gets to add that dexterity modifier to it. And he can always try and buy and learn how to use heavier armor later. So, as you can see, it jumps his AC to 14. So, boosts his AC a little bit, gives him some more of that armor, but still allows him to move about quickly. Because as we see from Gregor's armor with that chainmail, he actually has disadvantage on any stealth roll that he'll make. Braun does not have that issue. He's going to be able to move around freely. He's going to be able to sneak around freely. He'll have full reign of the battlefield. And then we need a burglar's pack. Yes. Pretty much all pretty much all ranged weapons use dexterity, except for hand axes. That's the only one that does it. Or hand axes and javelins. Those are strength based. Oh, might want to put a G in there. Might not be in the SRD, so I'll just add an Explorers. I generally prefer the Explorers pack, but the Dungeoneers kit is also really good. I mean, they both have their uses, so it's really up to you. But the Burglar's pack has more like specialized tools for thieving. I can add those in or post those later, just so nobody's confused. And then we just need 2 daggers and thieves' tools. Dagger. And a dagger. So now for Braun, what we're going to do is we are actually going to be running 1 short sword and 1 dagger. That means, unlike Gregor, who only makes 1 attack with his big old greatsword, Braun is actually going to be able to make 2 attacks a turn. 1 with his short sword, 1 with his dagger. And then all we need is thieves' tools. Gosh, I can never spell this right. Oh, there it is. Interesting. There's the burglar's pack. Okay. So now we just need to add Braun's abilities. So as was mentioned earlier, I think by Kimberly, Braun is going to get access to Thieves' Cant. That's going to be a specialized language. Is being ambidextrous a playable aspect or a character trait? You know, that's actually a good question. I don't think D&D has anything specifically on being an ambidextrous character. But yeah, since he can use 2 weapons, that's a good thing. That's a good question. It's more of the properties of the weapons that he's using. Since a short sword and a dagger are both light, he's able to use one in each hand, basically. Exactly. Now, there are some weapons that you would think that would be like one-handed, like, say, like the longsword is versatile. You can only use one. Two-handed fighting a feat, yes, it is. So, anybody can technically two-handed fighting as long as they are both light weapons. But then there's also dual wielding. Dual wielder. Here it is. So there is two weapon fighting, and then there's dual wielding or dual wielder. So anybody can technically two weapon fight as long as both of the weapons have the light property. Now, if you say wanted to use two rapiers or two long swords, you wanted to use some of those heavier weapons that don't have the light property and also don't have the heavy or two-handed property, because obviously, you can't double wield great swords. I don't know, maybe somebody can out there, but not me. But say I wanted to have, a pike and a net, like we were talking about with our Howland Reed. Yeah, Grey John Umber could. Yeah, he could. Gregor may be able to also. There are some older editions that had a feat called Monkey's Grip that would let you wield two-handed swords or two-handed weapons at once, but they kind of got rid of that with this edition. But like, say you wanted to play like a Howland Reed who uses a pike and a net, you would need something like Dual Wielder to be able to do that. Or like I used before, two rapiers or two long swords. If you wanted to do that kind of character, like you wanted to be like an Arthur Dane. You want to have Dawn in one hand and you want to have, your other long sword in the other hand, you would most likely need the dual wielder feat. Versus like a short sword is a light weapon. So we can use that with a dagger. Or you could use two short swords together, or two scimitars together, which is what my previous example, Dritz Do'Urden, he uses two scimitars. That's his main way of fighting. He's got two scimitars, and he's just a whirling dervish. So that's kind of what we're going for with Braun. Multiple attacks, light weapons, cutting people up. Exactly. Any class can technically use two light weapons, but if you want those heavier weapons, those bigger weapons, more damage, then you want that dual wielder feat. It gives you some extra benefits as well. So, our guy Braun is going to get Thieves' Cant. Which is a specialized language for thieves. So we're actually going to add that not only to his features, I'll spell it right one of these days. No. Come on. There it goes. So we have Thieves' Cant. We're going to add that to our languages. And I spelled it right. Let's go. So we have Thieves' Cant. We have Expertise. And basically what Expertise allows us to do is we get to choose 2 of our proficient skills and we get to add Expertise to them. That means that we are even better. Even better at these skills. We can also add that to a tool proficiency. So, for instance, our Thieves' Tools. And I believe that is in here. So here in Roll20, this is like my character settings. I can just click on this and it'll say normal or expertise. But just know, if you're doing this on your own character sheet, your form fillable, or you're writing in, basically your proficiency bonus is doubled for those 2 stats. So what was a +2 is now a +4. And for us, we're going to make one of them sleight of hand, and we're going to make the other one perception. Just so we have a good balance. Our passive perception is really high. We're spotting threats for our team. And also we can pickpocket and break locks a little bit easier. So that's what expertise is. And once we hit 6th level, we'll actually get to choose 2 more proficiencies to make even better. So that'll be good once we get to that point. And then our last thing that we get is Sneak Attack. This is the rogue's bread and butter. Sneak Attack is going to Sneak Attack is going to allow you to be able to do more damage if you have advantage on a roll or you are nearby allies. And this will actually scale with the class. So as you can see when I go back up here, on our chart, you can actually see how the Sneak Attack scales up. There's a column that shows you how good it gets. So by level 3, it goes from 1d6 to 2d6, 3d6, 4d6, all the way up to 10d6. So yeah, like Kimberly said, the Sneak Attack, the backstab, can get really, really effective at chunking out HP. And for that, I always just say, hey, you can know what your Sneak Attack is, or if you're doing it on Roll20, sometimes what I do is, where is it at? Yes. You can actually add in global damage modifiers. And when you know, it has a Sneak Attack. And I can add it as 1d6. On a critical, it does another 1d6. And it is sneak damage. So, if you guys are playing on Roll20, and say I make my short sword attack, and I have this box checked, 23 to hit, I roll my damage, it's going to give me what my weapon damage is down here, and then it's going to give me what that sneak attack damage is on top. And you just add those two numbers together, that's the total damage that you do. So, sneak attack, very good for rogues in doing a lot of extra damage. And since that rogue has 2 attacks, that rogue has 2 chances to hit that sneak attack. So say you miss your first attack and you hit your second attack, you can still use your sneak attack on that second attack. But if you hit your first attack and use your sneak attack, that's it. You can only use it on 1 damage roll per turn. So it's very good at doing a lot of damage, and since you're making 2 attacks, you have double the chance to be able to use it. And that's it. That's it for Braun. All we have to do is add in our background stuff, which we'll do shortly. But that's 2 of our characters done. We've made Braun, we've made Gregor. Now let's do Mel. So Mel is a wizard. That's just how we're rolling her for this time. But again, I mean, a lot of this is up to interpretation. Mel could be a warlock, Mel could be a wizard, Mel could be a sorceress. But just for the sake of our character building here, well, I guess I'm going to have to go from rogue anyway. Warlock. Okay. Now, our third and final, our wizard. So, wizard, a little bit more complicated than the other 2 because we have spellcasting. And I know what you see all the way over here, this huge chart with all these numbers and it's scaling up. That's going to be our spellcasting. Don't worry too much about this right now, because all we really need to worry about is right here, is just level 1. Now wizards are good because you just pick the spells that you want. You pick 2 at every level. And as you're playing through the game, you can buy spell scrolls, you can find spell books, and you can learn more spells that way. But every time you level up, you will always get to pick 2 levels of the spell slots that you have. Now, I'll talk about spell slots once we set up her stats and everything, because spell slots might be a little bit of a confusing concept, and I'll kind of want to give that its own breath. But basic things, just like we ran through with the other ones, we're just going to go through the class features real quick. Oh, did I add... sorry. I didn't add bronze health. So bronze health is going to be a D8, which is 8, plus 2, so he has 10 health. Sorry about that. Again, we add it the same way. Now... Oh, one last thing, and I'll do this with Mel whenever we talk about her HP level up. So when we get into wizards, it's more based on schools. So illusion magic is a school. When you get wizard to level 2, that's when you pick your school of magic. And I was going to save leveling up for our second session, our combat session. It's like, oh, we'll do a combat, and then we'll show you how to level everybody up, basically. So, Mel only gets a D6 for her hit die. Wizards have the lowest hit die in the game. They're built a little scrawny. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. So Mel only gets 1 hit dice. And now we need to build our stats. So this is actually the third and final way that you can build stats, and that's rolling for stats. Typically, this is not the most beginner-friendly way to do stats. You would have to ask your DM and okay it with them. But rolling for stats can give you some really good high-end stats, but there's a lot of variables to it. So the way that I always do stats, when I roll for them, it's getting them away. So the way that I always do stats, and again, some DMs do it differently, but this is the way that I always found is best, is that we do 4d6, so 4 regular dice. You drop the lowest of those 4 numbers and add them together. And then you roll 7 times, and then you drop the lowest of all of those rolls. So here's what I mean when I say that. So I'm going to roll 4d6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Holy crap, Mel has got some really good stats. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the lowest of each of these. So Mel has an 18, which is the highest that you can possibly get when rolling. An 8. A 15. A 13, a 16, wow, Mel is going to be busted, guys, and a 17. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, oh, and then our last is a 14. So we're just going to drop that 8. And then we're going to build Mel using this character stat array. So 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. I rolled incredibly lucky on this. Usually this is not the kind of stat array that you would get. This is a very, very high-end stat array. But basically what we're going to do now is we're just going to adjust to taste. So we know that with the high elf, I can just bring that up here, elf, high elf, we get a +2 to our dexterity and a +1 to our intelligence. So if we wanted, Mel could have a 20 stat. She could have 20 dexterity from the jump. And actually it might be, actually we're going to do it. Okay. So we're going to make her intelligence the 17, which gives us 18 intelligence. Incredible starting out. Our 18 we're going to put into Constitution. Since we don't get any bonuses to that, that gives us the maximum amount of health starting out. Our dexterity is going to be 18 as well. Gosh, Mel is starting out with 3 18s. Again, I did not think I was actually going to roll this high whenever I was going to do rolling. This is a cracked character. This is a cracked character. If you came to my table with this character and I didn't see you roll this, I would not believe it. We're going to make her wisdom 15, her charisma 14, and her strength 13. And again, this is this is probably not really what Mel's stats would be, but it's just what we rolled. It's just what we rolled. Sometimes when you roll stats, you can get incredibly lucky. Sometimes when you roll stats, it doesn't really work out so well. Now, if your DM allows stat rolling, and say you roll something really, really bad, like you roll a really bad stat array, usually what I do as a DM, I'll say you can either take that stat array, or you can throw it away and just do the standard array. So you can have the chance to get something really good, but if it's like so bad that it's not a playable character, then you can just use the standard array. But again, that's up to your DM. Some DMs, if they're going to allow you to roll, they say, hey, you got to stick with what you get. So again, just have that conversation with your DM. This is an absolutely cracked stat array. I've never rolled this good on a stat array before. So, armor, she has none. Weapons, she can only use daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaffs, and light crossbows. Mel doesn't really use any weapons, necessarily. We're going to go ahead and give her hit points, which in this case is 10. She has the same amount of HP as Braun, just because her rolls were so good. But then notice she still has these other proficiencies from other weapons because she's an elf. I kind of want to use this character in a game now. It's an insane character. Tools, none. Her saving throws are intelligence and wisdom. And she gets 2 of the following: Arcana, History, Insight, Investigation, Medicine, and Religion. And I think that this is a pretty easy 2 to choose from. I think she's going to have Arcana because she is a mage, and then she's going to have Religion because she is a Red Priestess of R'hllor. So that's very easy to set up, quick to throw the skills in. Now, when we go to her equipment, it says a quarterstaff or a dagger. We don't really know Mel to be carrying around a staff. Honestly, I let players roll. I love when players roll. Now, for beginners, I usually say standard array because you can just kind of put the numbers where you want. Like, oh, well, I know that this is my best stat. This is my second best stat. I'm getting these bonuses. I can put them here, here, here. But honestly, me personally as a DM, I either give the option of, hey, you can roll or you can do point buy. But if you fail on your point buy, you have to take standard. So, like, you could have the chance for really high stats, but you could also mess up. Or you can kind of fine-tune your character how you want with the point buy. But if you mess up your roll, then you don't have the option to go back and do point buy after the fact. You gotta take the standard. But typically, I like rolling. I think all 3 have their merits. With rolling, you can have some really, really awesome characters like we just rolled with Mel. Or you could have somebody who's like, they're not getting off the farm, you know? So it really just depends on what you're looking for. If you want the boom or bust, I like rolling. If you want the fine tuning, then I like point buy. If you just want to get a character and get it going, and you're good at your good things, and you have at least one bad stat so you can get some variety, then standard array is really good. But generally, it's always going to be up to your DM. Most DMs that I've ever played for generally do point buy as their system, because it gives you some flexibility, but it also doesn't make these like hugely insane characters like we have here. But I love rolling. I love rolling because I like when the players are overpowered. So I like overpowered characters because then that means that you can make the combats more dynamic. You can make things a little crazier. Okay, so she gets a dagger. We're gonna give her a dagger because, again, I don't think there's any kind of anything where Mel has used a staff or anything like that. She's mostly very stoic in her robes. A dagger, we're going to give her a component pouch. Yes, that's true. So, here when you look at, if you're making a caster, and it says a component pouch or an arcane focus, these two are the same. They do the exact same things. It's mostly just flavor. Do you want to be the wizard who... Do you want to be like Gandalf and raise your staff and you cast the spell? Or do you want to, go into your component pouch and pull out a pinch of silver and pluck a hair from your head, mix it together and blow it, and it makes somebody invisible? That's really the only difference between component pouch and arcane focus. It's mostly just flavor. Now, certain spells, especially certain high-level spells, you'll need a specific component that costs an amount of money to cast the spell. That's different from component pouch and arcane focus. But that's very spell-specific. Okay. We get spellcasting. Very nice. And I'll go back and clean this up later, because whenever I give you guys access to this, then, it'll make sense when you go in and look. So at first level, Mel also gets a spell book. As a wizard, this is where you keep all your spells. Now, if you're a sorcerer or a bard or a warlock, you won't have a spell book, but you'll have different ways of learning spells. This right here just goes over preparing and casting spells. I'll talk a little bit about this because that's a block of text. It's a lot simpler than you might think. When they just put it as a wall of text, though, it can get a little overwhelming. And then we basically get what's called Arcane Recovery. Arcane Recovery lets us recover one of our spells during one of those short rests. So if our party is taking a short rest and we've used a spell, we can use Arcane Recovery to regain one of those spells. Really handy just to give yourself some more longevity as a caster. Okay. So with our spell book, we get 6 first level spells, and we get 3 what are called cantrips. So if I go to my spell list, you'll see I have cantrips, and then I have spells leveled 1 through 9. Now you see I only have 2 slots in my first level spells. This means that of those 6 spells that I choose, I can cast those spells 2 times before I need to take a rest. Now cantrips, I can cast those as many times as I want. There is no cap to how many cantrips you can cast in a day. It's just what cantrips do I have available. Now, as a high elf, Mel actually gets 1 more cantrip. So, what I do, just so it's a little easier, you can just look up your class's specific spell list. Wikidot is really, really good at this because it will actually just separate your spells out by level. So here, I'm going to just create some things that are, or I'm just going to throw some things in there that are very thematic. Create. Oh, that might not be, because I'm using the SRD. One is going to be Firebolt. And basically, you're just beaming out of a thing of fire at one person. Sorry, this is all this is where you get into the weeds of making a spellcaster. But I'm just going to try and go with some of the old classics. Prestidigitation, which allows us to like clean our clothes, make some sensory effects. The old classic Mage Hand. I just love this spell. Maybe not thematic for Mel, but just a really fun utility spell to have. And then if somebody gets close to us, what better than just to give them a little shock? Yes, that is true. That is true. Not a whole lot of cantrips can be used as a bonus action, though. It's more, those are limited. Or if you're a sorcerer, you can use some of their class abilities to make casting a spell a bonus action. But just for our purposes, we're just going to use these 4. Firebolt gives us a nice long-range spell. Prestidigitation keeps us clean, helps on the road, things like that. Mage Hand is just great utility, opening doors, throwing distractions, things like that. And then should somebody get in our face, we can always shock them with Shocking Grasp. Okay, in our first level spells, one of the main ones that we're definitely going to get is Burning Hands. So unlike Firebolt, this actually unleashes, instead of a single target, it does a cone. So it can hit multiple enemies in front of us. Very good, useful, early on fire spell. We're going to get what Mel is also very known for, charming, and being very charming, especially to one Stannis Baratheon. So we're going to get her Charm Person. We'll give her Detect Magic. She's very good at that. Sensing the ley lines, the points of the world that are very important. She doesn't have a familiar. We'll give her Identify. 1, 2, 3. Yep. This is actually perfect. We'll give her Identify. The famous D&D classic Magic Missile. What wizard is without it? I hope it's EO. Doesn't it? Yeah, it's EO. Well, maybe I'm just spazzing. There it is. Magic Missile. And the other wizard staple. No, Bigsby's Hand is still here. Yeah, Bigsby's Hand is still here. Mordenkainen's Dog is still here. Tensor's Disc still here. Yeah, a lot of those classics. Yeah, a lot of the classics still in the game. So those are our spells for Mel. We took a couple thematic ones, and then we took a couple wizard mainstays. Now, when we're prepping our spells, well, her spellcasting ability is going to be Intelligence. And this should just auto-populate. When you see spell save DC, this is just 10 plus your modifier. And then spell attack bonus is just your modifier plus your proficiency bonus. So here, our Intelligence is a +4. So our spell save DC is 14. 10 plus 4. Our spell attack bonus is 4 plus 2, 6. Now, for wizards specifically, wizards prep spells a little bit differently than some of the other classes do. Some of the classes just get all of their spells. Whatever spells you picked, you have access to all of them. Wizards, on the other hand, have to prep a number of spells per day. This is your level plus your modifier. So since we're level 1 and our modifier is +4, we can prep 5 spells a day. We always have access to our cantrips, but now we just need to pick 5 of these spells. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll take Detect Magic. Now, if the spell has a little R beside it, that actually means it's a ritual spell. So, wizards have access to what's called ritual casting. So if these spells have the little R tag beside it, or they're a ritual spell, you can cast them without having the spell prepared, as long as you take the extra time and you have the spell in your spellbook. So as you can see, Mel has 2 ritual spells, but she can prepare up to 5. So we just picked Detect Magic because we might want to be able to immediately cast that without having to use the extra time that ritual casting needs. So, that's it. We have built 3 characters. The only thing that we need to do now is give them their backgrounds. So, Again, like I said, the SRD only has one background in it, unfortunately, which is the Acolyte, because they want you to build your own. Again, feel free to explore, talk with your DMs on what you specifically want your background to accentuate in your character. Now, me, because I have the book here, I'm just going to be using it, the backgrounds that they have. They have a lot of different backgrounds in here, but we're going to pick 3 quick ones. Because I kind of already know what I want these backgrounds to be for these characters. And they kind of fit with what we're already thinking about. So, the first one that we're going to use for Braun is Criminal. Braun is a sellsword. Not exactly a nice guy. Probably came up the hard way. So it makes sense that we go for the criminal background for it. Now we're just going to put that up here. Criminal. Just so we know. It's in our character sheet. And it's right there. Now, what does the criminal get? The criminal gets a specialty. This is one of the big things. They also get some tool proficiencies and skill proficiencies, as well as some new equipment. So, with our criminal background, we get access to deception and stealth. So, since we don't have deception, we get deception. Since we have stealth, we keep stealth. But that just gives us one more skill to put in that different list that we had. So we had insight, so we're going to choose insight. We had insight in our list before. We had mentioned that as being one of the ones that we wanted. So since we get access to stealth from our background, it gives us a little more flexibility with our skills. Now, our criminal speciality, we're going to go ahead and just say Enforcer. Braun is an enforcer for Tyrion. It makes sense. Criminal specialty. This is a background. He is an enforcer. Now, Braun also gets a criminal contact. This is purely a role-playing thing for you and your DM to talk about. This could be a really cool contact and a really cool way to add some role-playing and add a contact who could give you potential jobs in the future. So this is purely for you to discuss with your DM. Maybe you work this into your backstory. This is completely up to you. This is what the backgrounds are really there for. Giving you the ability to access different parts of the games than you might not previously. So he gets access to one type of gaming set and Thieves' Tools. He already has a gaming set. We'll say he is proficient in dice. Braun likes to shoot dice, let's say. When he's at the tavern, how he makes a couple extra dollars. Now, as you look through these backgrounds, they'll give you... Yes, yeah, really cool addition. So what these will give you is some samples of these. So if you look all the way on the right of your character sheet, you'll see these 4 blocks. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Now, when you pick a background, it'll give you some samples. You know, you can roll a d8 and you can get a personality trait. If you're going to do that, that's totally up to you. You can also just pick from these, or you can make your own. This just gives you some samples. Wendy, thanks for coming in. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thank you guys. So when you come in here, you can just roll or pick them yourselves, or you can make your own. I always like making my own, but for new players, this is a really great way just to help you nail down some of these big things. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. Those are just some things that you want to be thinking about in the back of your head as you're making your character, as you're making your backstory. And now he also gets some extras, a crowbar, a set of dark common clothes, and he also gets 15 gold. So a little bit of starting money. So we'll give him his 15 gold. I'll add in those extra items later. Now with Gregor, and again, as you can see, there's lots of different ones. Folk heroes, guild artisans. You can really make whatever kind of character you want with these. Hermits. You know, the sky is the limit for you. Nobles. Noble is not the one that I wanted, though, for Gregor. Because even though Gregor is a noble, I view him more as a soldier. So, he gets athletics and intimidation. Oh, and by the way, once you finish your background, this character is now completely done. Braun is completely done. We have a fully fleshed out level 1 rogue. Alignment. Chaotic. Neutral. So now we're done. We have Braun. Braun of the Blackwater, complete. Now let's finish up Gregor real fast. So with the soldier, we already get athletics and intimidation. So now we can mix these up, these other two skills that we had, however we want. Just so I can flip back and forth. So now we could pick, I think survival would be good for Gregor, as he is out in the field a lot. To do that, having some bushcraft is good. Also being able to set up traps like he set up on Beric Dondarrion. And we'll give him animal handling, since he does ride a horse very often. So now we've just added 2 more skills to our character because of our background. Our background gives us a lot more flexibility and a lot more utility with how we are actually using our skills and what we're good at. So with Soldier, we get Athletics Intimidation. We get 1 type of gaming set, and we also get proficiency in land vehicles. This means that we can ride horses, we can use carts, things that are definitely going to help our traversal. Gosh, I wish I was better at spelling. Land vehicles. And then 1 type of gaming set. We're just going to give him... We'll give him cards. Deck of cards. Just so we can vary it up a little bit from Braun. Our equipment, we get an insignia of rank, a trophy taken from a fallen enemy, so that could be whatever, dice or a deck of cards, a set of common clothes, and then 10 gold pieces. So I'll add all those extra items in later, but the main thing is we just want to give him his gold. That's our starting money. That is what we want. So his specialty, he is definitely an officer. And he would have a very high military rank as well, being Tywin Lannister, one of his most fearsome knights. His military rank. And then his specialty, which is an officer. And just like that, we're done with Gregor now. So after that, we're done. There are the suggested characteristics. You can always go through those. We don't necessarily need to do those for our level 1s, because that's mostly, you're going to do those for yourself. We don't really need to do them for our sample characters, because we kind of know what our sample characters are going to do. Add our soldier. And Gregor Clegane is done. And finally, our last one. Then leftover after equipment. That's a good question. 1 second. Yes. Now you can always, yes, Kimberly. But what I always tell players that they can do is, if you have equipment that you don't want at the very beginning, you could always sell it. So, like, you're just starting off with this amount of gold, but once you sell your other items, you can get more gold back. The stuff that you don't want. Also, like, GP is pretty valuable in 5e. Like, this is like what you deal with kings with, you know. Like I always say, copper's for peasants, silver's for merchants, gold is for like kings and nobles. So having 10 gold at the start probably doesn't seem like a whole lot of gold starting out, but it's actually, like, for cost of living and things like that, it's a pretty sizable amount. And then you're always going to get more gold as you start adventuring. You sell things, things like that. Taking dead men's equipment. There's tons of ways to get gold. Gold is plentiful in 5e. And if you play with a DM like me, I give gold till it hurts. Okay. And finally, for Mel, we are going to give her the Sage background. Spending years learning lore in a shy, shadow binding. Yeah. I give that sweet, sweet gold. So we're going to give her the Sage. So for that, she would get History. And then she also gets Arcana. So since she already has Arcana, something like Investigation, her looking for clues, things like that, Very, very helpful. And it rounds out our party's skills as well. We have somebody who is good at history, religion, investigating, looking for clues, knowing magic. We have somebody who's intimidating, strong, good with animals. And then we have somebody who's our slippery, sneaky, oh, I can see what people are thinking, or I know what people's motivations are. So we have a pretty good base of skills to tackle a whole bunch of different aspects of the more role-playing side, the more skill side. So for Sage, she gets Arcana and History. She also learns 2 more languages, so Mel is really stacking up the languages here. Let's say Bravosi. And then, you know what? We'll also give her Tyroshi. So her and Braun can have some sneaky little conversations in a foreign language. That's something else that you can work with the other people in your group on, and your DM is, hey, Kimberly and Erica both know Elvish, or you both know Draconic, or you both know this certain specific language that nobody else knows. So you guys could converse in that language. If you say don't trust somebody, or you're talking to an NPC and they don't know Tyroshi, we can communicate back and forth with each other and kind of keep some secrets. It gives you a lot more options in that role-playing side as well. And then she gets her equipment, a bottle of black ink, a quill, a small knife, a letter from a dead colleague posing a question that you have not yet been able to answer. For Mel, this could be the Azor Ahai myth. Yes, that is also a very good point, Kimberly. Yes, one person taking Dungeoneers, one person taking Explorers. We had Braun, who has the Burglars pack. Gives a lot of variety, exactly. You want to cover a lot of bases. Set of common clothes in a belt pouch containing 10 gold. So we want to make sure that she gets her 10 gold. That starting gold is important. Gotta eat. And then for Mel, her specialty, I would say probably an alchemist. But then, even then, you know what? You could put her specialty. Again, specialty doesn't have to be something in the book. Yeah. Just keep up appearances, exactly. So for her specialty, because we're looking at a world-specific character, she's a Shadowbinder. Simple as that. Mel is a Shadowbinder. That is her speciality. And I know that that's not in the Sage thing right here, but that's the good thing about all of those different backgrounds. You can really customize them and flip them however you need, as long as you're consulting with your DM about it. As long as they know what you're doing, makes it easier on their side to plan, and you get to kind of make your character how you want. So again, backgrounds are very flexible. And then her final thing is she gets the researcher feat. Or researcher feature. Which basically just helps her if she needs to research any kind of topic. She attempts to recall a piece of lore or something that she doesn't know. She can usually find a place to obtain it. Just a very easy way of unearthing deep secrets, while you can broaden out the quest pool in a way. So you can get it from things like libraries, universities, other sages, other people, creatures, so things like dragons, things like that. And this is mostly up to your DM. Your DM might say, well, you wanna find, ancient lore about the Azor Ahai myth. You're gonna need to travel all the way to the Wall. You're gonna have to go to Westeros. So you can find more about this prince that was promised prophecy that you read about one time in a library. That's a good way of kind of describing what the researcher feed does. Or the researcher feature does. And that's it. And just like that, we have made 3 complete characters. We have Bronn of the Blackwater. And I added in a fun little character picture for each. This will help when we get into part 2, where we'll have character tokens and we'll be moving around the map some more. But we created Bronn of the Blackwater. We created Sir Gregor Clegane the Mountain. And we created the Lady in Red, Lady Melisandre. So we basically have a full party here. You could play with 3 people. You can play with up to 8 people. Again, I've seen people in West Marches, they play with 30 people. So the size of the game, the variety of the game, what kind of things you want to do with your characters, the variety in those characters, the variety in your party is really all up to you, your imagination, and just conversing and talking with your DM. It's a really, really awesome game. Gives a lot of room for creativity. You could basically make any character that you can imagine. Some of the characters that I've made, just for fun, based off of popular culture characters, I've made an Iron Man character. I've made a Rurouni Kenshin character. You just saw I made Bronn, Gregor, and Melisandre. You want to make it, you can make it. It is possible for you to make virtually any character concept that you want, or make one that's completely all your own. So, that's basically how to make a character. Now, really, what is up to you guys is what race, what class, and what background you want that character to be. And that's completely variable. If you want to message me on Discord and get all of the supplement books and look at all of these different races and different subclasses and different backgrounds, I'm more than happy to send all that to you, because since the game has been out for now 11 years, there are so many options out there. There are so many books out there. Tons of ways that you can customize your character that's beyond the SRD and the just basic player's handbook. But now I just want to open up for questions. If anybody has questions or anything like that, I'm going to check our Discord. I noticed some people dropped a couple questions in there. Okay. So yeah, Discord's good. Yes. Hey, thank you guys so much for coming in. Yeah. Sweet. Awesome, Weesant. Dude, that is so helpful. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you guys for coming in. And again, feel free. We're all on the same Discord server, so feel free to just shoot me a question anytime. You can DM me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, especially as you guys kind of go out now on your own. Looking out at what your options are, all of those different classes. If you have any questions or you're confused about anything, hey, I really want to play a druid, but I don't really quite understand Hey, we met our follower goal, 50 of 50. Thank you, everybody. Man, that is awesome. Thank you guys so much. That's amazing. Wow, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. Wow, that made me feel awesome. You guys are all great. Again, if you have any questions and you're out there and you're making your character and you're saying, hey, I really want to play a druid, but I don't quite understand what this wild shape thing is. Or, hey, I looked it over and I think sorcerer is what I really want to do. Can you help talk me through meta magic? Or warlock, hey, can you talk me through what packs are? There's a lot of different options out there. So as you guys kind of go out and you're exploring, just feel free to shoot me a question. Shoot me a question on Discord anytime. I'm more than happy to answer you. And if we need to hop in the D&D Discord channel, and I can share my screen and walk you through it, or you can share your screen and I can walk you through it. So I'm here for whatever you guys need. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you guys for sitting with me for this time. And for everybody who will be watching this as a VOD on YouTube, thank you guys for watching there. And if there's no questions, then I think that we're basically done. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. This was awesome, amazing experience, and I'm glad to share my knowledge with everybody, especially as we kind of get this thing off the ground. So. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, next session we're gonna do is gonna be beginner session 2, White Room Combat. So we're gonna throw these 3 characters onto our board out here, and we're gonna run a full-fledged combat and a full-fledged level up. So you'll see how these characters go from level 1 to 2 and how they operate in combat. So we'll do all that next time, and I'll be setting that up. We'll make an event in the Discord. We'll make sure to post it in the general, just so everybody has access to it, because this was really great. And if we can keep this rolling in a beginner session series, I think that is awesome. So, all right. If you guys have any questions, again, just shoot them to me. Again, I'm more than happy to help you guys out with whatever, but I hope you guys all have an awesome weekend, and I'll see my LML people Sunday for book club, and yeah, have a great night, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Later days.